My parents looked me dead in the eyes and said, "The greatest gift for Sarah's wedding would be if you disappeared from our family forever." I'm Rebecca Martinez, 32 years old, and I've been the family's ATM for 8 years. Every bill, every emergency, every luxury vacation, all funded by me while living in their basement. But when my sister Sarah announced her $50,000 dream wedding, they expected me to pay and vanish so I wouldn't embarrass the family photos. I owned their house, their cars, and controlled every bank account. They had no idea what they just triggered. Within 24 hours, I became their worst nightmare. Here's exactly what happened when I disappeared from their lives forever. The Martinez family dinner table had always been my stage for silent sacrifice. Every evening at 6 sharp, we'd gather around the mahogany table I'd purchased 3 years ago when Dad's credit got declined at the furniture store. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was buying the table where I'd continue to be served leftovers of their affection. "Sarah's wedding is going to be absolutely perfect," Mom gushed, her manicured nails paid for by my credit card, tapping excitedly against her wine glass. "The Riverside Country Club, 300 guests, a live orchestra. Finally, the Martinez family will have something to be truly proud of." I sat in my usual spot, the chair closest to the kitchen so I could jump up whenever someone needed something. Laptop open, vendor invoices spread across my placemat. While they dreamed, I calculated. Venue deposit, $15,000. Catering, $18,000. Photography, $5,000. Flowers, $8,000. My savings account bleeding out in real time. "And the dress," Sarah squealed from across the table, her engagement ring catching the light from the chandelier I'd had installed last Christmas. "It's a Vera Wang, only $12,000, which is practically a steal for couture." Sir Dad nodded approvingly, raising his scotch. "Aged 18 years, $300 a bottle, naturally purchased by yours truly. Our little princess deserves nothing but the best. Rebecca, you'll handle the dress payment tomorrow, right? Sarah wants to secure it before someone else snatches it up." I looked up from my laptop screen, cursor hovering over the venue contract that required my electronic signature. "Of course," I said, the words automatic after 8 years of financial servitude. "I'll call the bridal salon first thing in the morning." "You're such a saint, Becca," Sarah beamed, but her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. It was the same smile she'd given me since childhood, grateful but somehow distant, like I was a benevolent stranger rather than her sister. Mom leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "You know, Rebecca, we were talking about the seating arrangements, and we think it might be best if—" She paused, exchanging a meaningful look with Dad. The room suddenly felt smaller. I minimized my laptop screen, giving them my full attention for the first time in months. "If what?" "Well, honey." Dad cleared his throat, setting down his scotch with deliberate care. "The thing is, your sister's wedding is going to be, how should I put this, a very sophisticated affair. The guest list includes some very prominent people from the community. Sarah's fiancé's family, they're accustomed to a certain standard." My stomach started to knot. I'm not following. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her chair, suddenly fascinated by her salad. "What they're trying to say is, we think it would be better if you weren't there." The words hit like a physical blow. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Now, don't get upset," Mom rushed to add, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when she thought I was being dramatic. "It's not personal, sweetheart. It's just that, well, you know how you get at social events. Remember Cousin Maria's wedding? You spent the entire reception sitting alone at the corner table, barely talking to anyone." "I was paying the bartender and managing the gift table because you asked me to," I said slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Exactly," Dad jumped in, as if I'd proven his point. "You're always working, always stressed about money. This is Sarah's day to shine, and we need everyone to be, present, celebrating, not worried about spreadsheets and vendor payments." I stared at them. These people who had raised me, who claimed to love me, who had systematically trained me to be their personal bank account for the better part of a decade. You want me to pay for the entire wedding but not attend it? Think about it logically. Sarah finally spoke up, her voice small but determined. You hate crowds anyway. You always complain about having to dress up. And honestly, Rebecca, you've been so stressed about the costs that you're kind of bringing down the whole mood. Mom nodded vigorously. We love you, honey, but you have to admit you're not exactly the life of the party. This wedding is about joy, about celebration, about new beginnings. The subtext hung in the air like smoke. About beautiful people, about success, about everything I apparently wasn't. I closed my laptop with a soft click. So let me get this straight. You want me to fund your dream wedding. Venue, dress, catering, flowers, music, everything, but disappear on the actual day so I don't embarrass you in front of your fancy friends? Don't be so dramatic, Dad sighed, running his hands through his silver hair. We're not asking you to disappear. We're asking you to give your sister this one day. You'll have other opportunities to celebrate with the family. When? I asked. When will I have opportunities? Because for the past 8 years, every family celebration has been funded by me, but centered around everyone else. Every graduation, every promotion, every anniversary dinner. I pay, you celebrate, I clean up. Rebecca, that's not fair. Mom's voice sharpened. We've never asked you to do any of that. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed her for a second. Almost. But then I thought about the mortgage payments I'd been making for 5 years when Dad's business went under. The car payments for vehicles I wasn't allowed to drive because they were too nice for my lifestyle. The credit card bills for their Mediterranean cruise last summer while I ate ramen in my childhood bedroom. You're right, I said quietly, standing up from the table. You never asked. You just expected. And I just gave. Where are you going? Sarah called as I headed for the kitchen door. We haven't finished discussing the wedding timeline. I turned back to look at them, my family, gathered around the table I'd bought, in the house I was paying for, planning a wedding I was funding but couldn't attend. They looked so perfect sitting there, so satisfied with their solution. They'd found a way to get everything they wanted without any inconvenient complications. I need some air, I said. I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, the same room I'd been living in since college because I could never quite afford my own place after covering everyone else's expenses. The walls were still painted the pale pink I'd chosen when I was 12, before I learned that wanting things for yourself was selfish. I sat on my twin bed, surrounded by participation trophies and honor roll certificates that had once made my parents so proud. When had their pride in me shifted from my achievements to my paycheck? When had I become the family's solution to every financial problem instead of their daughter? My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. I know you're upset, but please understand, this is the most important day of my life. I stared at the message for a long time. The most important day of her life, funded entirely by mine. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every family dinner, every emergency expense, every time they'd looked at me with that mixture of gratitude and, was it pity or disappointment? I couldn't tell anymore. At 3 a.m., I finally understood what I'd been to them all these years. I wasn't Rebecca the daughter, Rebecca the sister, Rebecca the person with dreams and feelings and a life of her own. I was Rebecca the resource, Rebecca the solution, Rebecca the inconvenient truth that someone had to pay for their lifestyle. The next morning, I found them in the kitchen, gathered around wedding magazines like generals planning a military campaign. Rebecca! Mom looked up brightly. Perfect timing. We need to finalize the menu selections, and the caterer needs a deposit by noon. I poured myself coffee from the machine I'd bought last Christmas, adding cream from the organic dairy I'd been paying extra for because Sarah was lactose sensitive. Before we talk about deposits, I need to clarify something about the wedding. Of course, honey. What do you need to know? I need to know exactly what you meant last night when you said I shouldn't attend. Dad folded his newspaper, subscription paid monthly from my checking account, and looked at me with what he probably thought was paternal patience. Rebecca, we explained this. It's not that we don't want you there. It's that we think you'd be more comfortable not having to deal with all the social pressure. More comfortable, I repeated. Or less embarrassing. Sarah looked up from her magazine, irritation flashing across her features. Why are you making this about you? This is my wedding day. Can't you just be supportive for once? I've been supportive for 8 years, I said quietly. I've been supportive to the tune of, let me think, roughly $200,000 in mortgage payments, car payments, credit card bills, medical expenses, and family vacations that I was either too busy working to attend or too awkward to enjoy. Rebecca, Mom's voice carried a warning. That's not how we're going to discuss this. How are we going to discuss this? I asked. Because I'm trying to understand. Yesterday, you asked me to disappear from your wedding. Today, you want me to write more checks for it. I'm having trouble seeing the logic. Dad stood up abruptly. The logic is that you're part of this family, and family members support each other. That's what families do. Support each other, I nodded. Like how you supported me when I wanted to go to graduate school but couldn't afford it because I was paying your mortgage? Or how you supported my career when I had to turn down that promotion in Seattle because someone needed to stay local to handle the family finances? That was your choice, Sarah snapped. Nobody forced you to do any of that. She was right, and that was the most devastating part. Nobody had forced me. They'd just made it clear in 1,000 small ways that my love would be measured by my willingness to sacrifice, that my place in the family was contingent on my usefulness, that wanting things for myself was selfish, but wanting things from me was natural. I set down my coffee cup and looked at the 3 people who had shaped my entire adult life around their needs. You're absolutely right, Sarah. Nobody forced me, just like nobody's forcing me to continue. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Energy efficient, top of the line, purchased by me 6 months ago when the old one broke down. What does that mean? Mom asked carefully. It means, I said, walking toward the kitchen door, that if you want me to disappear from your wedding, I'll disappear from your wedding. In fact, I'll disappear completely. You'll get exactly what you asked for. Rebecca, wait, Dad called. Let's not be hasty here. We can work something out. I paused at the threshold. Work something out? Like what? Like I can attend the wedding I'm paying for as long as I promise to sit in the back and not talk to anyone? Like I can exist in this family as long as I stay invisible? That's not what we meant, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I turned back to face them. Because that's what you've meant for years. I can be part of this family as long as I pay the bills and don't ask for anything in return. As long as I make your lives easier without complicating them. As long as I disappear whenever my presence becomes inconvenient. The truth hung between us like a bridge neither side wanted to cross. You know what? I continued. Maybe you're right. Maybe it would be better for everyone if I disappeared. But here's the thing about disappearing. When you vanish, everything you were holding up vanishes too. With that, I walked upstairs and closed my bedroom door. Through the thin walls, I could hear them talking in hushed, urgent voices. I caught fragments. She's being dramatic. She'll calm down. She always does this when she's stressed. They were wrong about that last part. I had never done this. In 32 years of being their daughter, their sister, their personal financial institution, I had never drawn a line. I had never said no. I had never demanded anything for myself, but they'd finally asked for something I could actually give them. They wanted me to disappear, so I would. That afternoon, while they went to the bridal salon to finalize Sarah's dress fitting, I sat in my childhood bedroom and made a phone call that would change everything. Martinez residence, I answered when my own house phone rang, knowing it was probably a vendor calling about wedding deposits. Hi, this is Jenny from Riverside Country Club. I need to confirm the final guest count for the Martinez-Davidson wedding. Actually, I said, staring at my reflection in the vanity mirror I'd bought for myself when I was 16. I need to discuss a change to the booking. Of course. What can I help you with? I took a deep breath. The wedding is canceled. There was a pause. I'm sorry, canceled? But we just received a deposit yesterday. That's correct. And as the person whose credit card was used for that deposit, I'm informing you that the event will not be taking place. Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with Sarah Martinez or her parents to confirm this cancellation. I am Rebecca Martinez, and the deposits were made from my personal accounts. Check your records. Another pause, longer this time, filled with the sound of typing. Oh my. Yes, I see here that all payments have been made by Rebecca Martinez. But I'm so confused. Is this some kind of family dispute? No, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. This is me giving my family exactly what they asked for. They wanted me to disappear from the wedding. Mission accomplished. After I hung up, I called the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer, then the band. Each conversation followed the same pattern: confusion, verification of my payment records, and ultimately, professional courtesy as they processed my cancellations. By the time my family returned from the bridal salon, Sarah's dream wedding existed only in her imagination. I heard them come through the front door, voices bright with excitement. Sarah was describing alterations to her dress. Mom was gushing about how beautiful she looked. Dad was joking about the dent in my credit card. Their voices carried up the stairs as they made their way to the kitchen, probably to continue their wedding planning over coffee and the expensive pastries Sarah loved from the French bakery downtown. Then the house phone rang. I listened from my bedroom as Mom answered it cheerfully. Martinez residence? The cheerfulness didn't last long. What do you mean, canceled? Mom's voice pitched higher. There must be some mistake. I heard the phone being passed around, urgent whispers, the sound of chairs scraping against the kitchen floor. Jenny, this is Robert Martinez, Sarah's father. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. More whispers. The word Rebecca repeated several times with increasing urgency. Finally, footsteps on the stairs. All three of them, moving fast. My bedroom door flew open without a knock. They stood there in the doorway like an angry tribunal. Mom clutching the cordless phone, Dad red-faced and breathing hard, Sarah still wearing the paper bracelet from her dress fitting. What did you do? Sarah's voice cracked on the last word. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been updating my resume for the first time in 5 years. I gave you what you wanted. You asked me to disappear from your wedding, so I did. You canceled the venue? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photography, the music. I ticked off each item on my fingers. Everything that was booked under my name, paid for with my money, secured with my credit cards. I disappeared it all. Sarah sank onto my bed like her strings had been cut. You can't do this. The wedding is in 2 weeks. The wedding you didn't want me to attend, I reminded her. The wedding where my presence would be embarrassing, where I'd bring down the mood, where I'd be too awkward and stressed to contribute anything positive. Rebecca, honey. Dad's voice was carefully controlled, like he was talking to someone having a breakdown. I think you've misunderstood what we were saying yesterday. Did I? I closed my laptop and gave him my full attention. Because what I heard was that you wanted me to pay for everything and then disappear so I wouldn't embarrass you, and that's exactly what I did. We never said we wanted you to disappear completely, Mom protested. We just thought maybe you'd be happier. Happier where? I interrupted. Happier hiding in my room while you celebrated downstairs? Happier knowing that my own family finds my presence so unbearable that they'd rather I didn't exist on the most important day of their lives? Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. This is my wedding, Rebecca. My one perfect day. How could you destroy it like this? And there it was, the question I'd been waiting 8 years to answer. How could I destroy it? I stood up slowly, feeling something shift inside my chest, like a locked door finally opening. Sarah, I didn't destroy your wedding. I just stopped paying for it. If my absence destroys your perfect day, then maybe it was never about the day at all. Maybe it was just about my wallet. The silence that followed was deafening. "You can't be serious," Dad finally said. "This is your family, your sister. You can't just abandon us over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? Because I was pretty clear about what I heard. You wanted me to disappear. You got tired of pretending to want me around when all you really wanted was my bank account." "That's not true," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" I walked to my dresser and pulled out a folder I'd been keeping for years. Bank statements, receipts, payment confirmations. "Let's do some math, shall we? In the past 5 years alone, I've paid $47,000 toward this mortgage. I've put $23,000 into car payments for vehicles I'm not allowed to drive. I've covered $31,000 in credit card debt for vacations I didn't go on, restaurants I didn't eat at, and shopping sprees I wasn't invited to." I spread the papers across my bed like evidence in a trial. "I've paid for emergency room visits, dental work, prescription medications, home repairs, appliance replacements, and insurance premiums. I've funded date nights for your anniversary, graduation parties for Sarah, and birthday celebrations where I gave expensive gifts and received drugstore candles in return." Sarah stopped crying and stared at the papers. I didn't know it was that much." "Of course you didn't know," I said softly. "Because knowing would make it harder to ask for more. It's easier to see me as the family ATM when you don't think about the person inside the machine." "Rebecca, we're grateful for everything you've done," Dad started, but I held up my hand. "Stop. Please stop saying you're grateful. Because grateful people don't ask the person they're grateful to disappear from important events. Grateful people don't treat financial support like an obligation. Grateful people don't make someone choose between being loved and being useful." I sat back down on my bed, suddenly exhausted. "You want to know the truth? I would have been happy to pay for Sarah's wedding. I would have been thrilled to give her the perfect day she dreamed of. But I wanted to be there. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to exist in this family as more than just a source of funding." "You can still be part of it," Sarah said desperately. "We can fix this. We can call everyone back and what?" I interrupted. "Pretend yesterday never happened? Pretend you didn't tell me the greatest gift I could give you was my absence? Pretend that my presence at your wedding wouldn't still be embarrassing to you?" The room fell quiet again, except for Sarah's sniffling and the sound of our breathing. "Here's what's going to happen," I said finally. "You're going to have the wedding you can afford without me. Maybe it won't be at the Riverside Country Club with 300 guests and a live orchestra. Maybe it'll be smaller, simpler, more intimate. But it'll be yours, and it'll be real, and most importantly, you won't have to worry about me ruining it with my awkwardness." "Rebecca, please," Mom whispered. "Let's talk about this like adults." "I am talking about this like an adult," I replied. "For the first time in 8 years, I'm talking about this like an adult who has choices, who has boundaries, who has the right to be wanted by her own family." I stood up and walked to my closet, pulling out a suitcase I'd bought for a vacation I'd never taken because the money had gone to someone else's emergency. "What are you doing?" Dad asked. "I'm disappearing," I said simply. "Just like you asked me to." That night, after they'd retreated to their separate corners to process what I'd done, I sat on my bedroom floor with my laptop, surrounded by 8 years of financial documents. But this time, I wasn't calculating how much I could afford to give them. I was calculating how much they'd taken. The number was staggering, $247,000. $250,000 that I'd funneled into their lifestyle while living like a broke college student in my childhood bedroom. Money that could have bought me a house, funded graduate school, or given me the freedom to build a life of my own. Instead, it had bought me the privilege of being treated like an ATM with abandonment issues. I opened a new browser window and started researching something I'd never allowed myself to consider before: how to go no contact with toxic family. The search results were overwhelming. Thousands of articles, support groups, forums filled with people telling stories that sounded exactly like mine. "You're not responsible for funding other people's dreams." Financial abuse is still abuse. It's okay to choose yourself. Blood doesn't give people the right to bleed you dry. For the first time in years, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel selfish. I felt validated. I found a forum specifically for adult children who'd been financially exploited by their families. The stories were heartbreakingly familiar. Parents who'd convinced their children that love meant sacrifice. Siblings who'd been raised to see one child as the family piggy bank. Extended families who'd turned a blind eye as long as someone else was paying the bills. The hardest part, one user had written, was realizing that I wasn't their daughter. I was their solution to a problem they didn't want to solve themselves. I created an account and shared my story. Within an hour, I had dozens of responses. People who understood, people who'd been exactly where I was, people who'd found their way out. One response particularly caught my attention. The beautiful thing about being financially independent is that you hold all the power. They just don't know it yet. When you're ready to use that power, use it strategically. Make every action count. I spent the rest of the night reading success stories from people who'd reclaimed their lives from financially abusive families. Some had gone no contact immediately. Others had set strict boundaries and limited contact. All of them had one thing in common. They'd stopped being their family's personal bank account and started being their own person. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. While my family slept off their shock from the previous day, I got dressed, really dressed, in the professional clothes I rarely wore because I was always too busy handling their emergencies to handle my own career. My first stop was the bank where I'd been loyally making their mortgage payments for 5 years. The same bank where I'd co-signed their car loans, where I'd opened joint accounts to make it easier to handle their expenses, where I'd built excellent credit that they'd been benefiting from while theirs remained abysmal. "Ms. Martinez," the branch manager, Janet, greeted me warmly. "What can I help you with today?" "I need to make some significant changes to my accounts," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "And I need to understand my options regarding co-signed loans and joint accounts." Janet's smile faltered slightly. In 5 years of handling their family finances, I'd never asked about options. I'd only asked about how to give more. For the next 2 hours, Janet and I went through every account, every loan, every financial entanglement that connected me to my family. The picture that emerged was even more revealing than I'd expected. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," I said, reviewing the paperwork. "I'm the primary holder on the mortgage, both car loans and all the credit cards. My parents are authorized users and co-signers, but I'm the one legally responsible for all debts." "That's correct. And the house deed?" Janet checked her records. "The house is in your name. Your parents were added as residents, but you're the legal owner." I sat back in my chair, absorbing this information. Somehow, in my eagerness to help, I'd accidentally made myself the owner of their entire lifestyle. "Oh, what happens if I remove them as authorized users?" "They would lose access to the credit cards and bank accounts immediately. However, they would still be responsible for any existing vaults on jointly held debts. And the mortgage? Since you're the primary holder and legal owner, you have full control over the property. You could sell it, refinance it, or..." She paused delicately. "Change the living arrangements." I felt something shift in my chest, not guilt this time, but possibility. "Janet, I need to make some changes, today." By the time I walked out of the bank 3 hours later, I was no longer financially entangled with people who found my existence embarrassing. I was a 32-year-old woman with excellent credit, substantial savings, and for the first time in 8 years, complete control over my own money. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and called my real estate agent, a woman I'd worked with years ago when I'd briefly considered buying my own place before Dad's business failed and I'd decided I needed to stay home to help. "Rebecca, it's been forever. What can I do for you?" "I need to sell a house. Fast." "Your parents' house? Are they downsizing?" "It's my house," I corrected. "And yes, they'll definitely be downsizing." My next call was to a lawyer specializing in family finances and estate planning. I'd found her through the online support group, highly recommended for helping people untangle themselves from financial abuse situations. Martinez Law Office, this is Lisa Martinez, no relation, she said when she answered her direct line. The coincidence of the name made me smile for the first time in days. I need help understanding my legal rights in a family financial situation. Are you in immediate danger? Not physical danger, no, but I think I might be in what you'd call financial danger. From my own family. We talked for an hour. She explained concepts I'd never heard of: financial abuse, economic coercion, predatory family dynamics. She helped me understand that what I'd been calling family obligation had actually been exploitation. The fact that you're asking these questions tells me you already know something is wrong, she said. Trust that instinct. And Rebecca, document everything. Every payment, every request, every conversation. If this escalates, you'll want evidence. When I got home, the house was buzzing with activity. I could hear voices in the kitchen, my parents, Sarah, and what sounded like Sarah's fiancé, David. They were in crisis mode, frantically calling vendors and trying to salvage what was left of the wedding plans. I walked past the kitchen and went straight upstairs, but not before catching fragments of their conversation. Maybe if we apologize? She can't stay mad forever. She's just having a breakdown. She'll come to her senses. They were planning their strategy for getting me back on board, for convincing me to restore their funding, for managing me back into compliance. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop, pulling up the email I'd started writing but never sent. My resignation letter from the family bank of Rebecca Martinez. But first, I had one more call to make. Riverside Country Club, this is Jenny. Hi, Jenny, this is Rebecca Martinez. We spoke yesterday about the canceled wedding. Oh, yes, Ms. Martinez. I hope everything is all right with your family. Actually, I was wondering if you had any availability for a small ceremony in the next few weeks. Just for 2 people. There was a pause. Are you planning your own wedding? In a way, I said, looking around my childhood bedroom with its pink walls and participation trophies. I'm planning my Independence Day. That evening, while my family held an emergency meeting in the living room, I stayed upstairs and methodically went through everything I owned, everything I'd paid for, everything that was legally mine versus everything they'd assumed was theirs. The list was eye-opening. The house, both cars, all the appliances, most of the furniture, the electronics, even the fancy dinnerware they used for special occasions. I'd paid for nearly everything in their lives, while they'd paid for nearly nothing in mine. Around 10 p.m., there was a soft knock on my door. Rebecca, it's Sarah. Can I come in? I looked up from my packing. It's open. Sarah slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked smaller somehow, younger, like the little sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, she began, sitting on the edge of my bed. About the money, about everything you've done for us. And I think, maybe I didn't realize how much you were sacrificing, how much you were giving up for us. I stopped folding clothes and looked at her. What changed your mind? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. David asked me how much the wedding cost. When I told him you were paying for everything, he asked why. And I realized I didn't have a good answer. I just said it was because you love me. I do love you, Sarah. But love shouldn't cost $50,000, should it? She whispered. Love shouldn't cost your whole life. I sat down beside her on the bed. No, it shouldn't. Mom and Dad are downstairs planning how to get you to change your mind. They think if they apologize and promise you can come to the wedding, you'll pay for everything again. What do you think? Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. I think they don't understand that this isn't about the wedding anymore. This is about 8 years of taking you for granted. This is about treating you like our personal charity instead of our family. I felt my throat tighten. Sarah, I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared because I don't know how to plan a wedding without you. I don't know how to manage money or deal with vendors or handle any of the adult things you've been handling for us. And I'm scared because I think we broke something that can't be fixed. You didn't break anything, I said softly, but you can't unbreak it either. I can't go back to being your financial solution. I can't go back to being invisible whenever my presence becomes inconvenient." Sarah nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "I know, and I don't want you to. I want I want to learn how to do things myself. I want to have a relationship with my sister that isn't about money. That's going to be hard work. Harder than living in your childhood bedroom at 32 because you've been supporting your entire family?" she asked with a watery smile. I laughed despite everything. "Good point." Sarah stood up and walked to the door, then turned back. "Rebecca, I'm sorry. Not sorry like, I'm sorry, please give us money. Sorry like, I'm sorry we made you feel like you didn't matter except for your wallet. Sorry like, I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see what we were doing to you." After she left, I sat alone in my room and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope that they would change, but hope that maybe someday we could build something new, something real. But first, I had to finish disappearing from their old life. The next morning, I woke up early and loaded my car with everything that was actually mine. It wasn't much. Most of my possessions were either practical necessities or gifts I'd bought for myself and immediately felt guilty about. 8 years of putting everyone else first had left me with surprisingly little to show for my own life. I left a folder on the kitchen counter with all the house-related documents, insurance policies, and a list of monthly expenses they'd need to figure out how to handle themselves. I also left a note. "This house will be on the market by Friday. I've arranged for a 30-day transition period so you can find alternative living arrangements. All joint accounts have been closed. You are no longer authorized users on my credit cards. The cars will need to be refinanced in your names within 60 days or they'll be repossessed. I've left contact information for a financial counselor who can help you create a budget and payment plan for your existing debts. This isn't punishment. This is me choosing to save myself. I love you all, but I love myself too. And for the first time in 8 years, I'm going to act like it. Rebecca P.S. Sarah, my offer stands. If you want to have a small, simple wedding that you can actually afford, I'd be honored to attend as your sister, not your sponsor. I drove to a hotel across town and checked into a suite for the week. It was expensive, but for the first time in years, I was spending my money on something I actually wanted. The freedom was intoxicating. By noon, my phone was ringing nonstop. First my parents, angry and disbelieving. Then Sarah, panicked about the house sale. Then extended family members who'd apparently been called in for intervention duty. I turned off my phone and ordered room service, lobster and champagne, because I was celebrating my independence and I could afford it now that I wasn't supporting 3 other adults. That afternoon, I got a call from Jenny at the Riverside Country Club. "Ms. Martinez? I have some interesting news. We had a cancellation for this Saturday, a small ceremony space that would be perfect for an intimate wedding. 20 guests maximum. Are you interested?" I looked out my hotel window at the city I'd lived in my entire life, but never really explored because I'd been too busy handling other people's problems. "Actually, Jenny, I think I'd like to use it for something else. Do you ever host celebration parties? Like new life celebrations?" "I'm not sure I follow." "I'm throwing myself a party," I said, surprised by how good the words felt. I just bought my own life back party. Can you handle catering for one very grateful customer who wants to celebrate being free?" There was a pause, then laughter. "Ms. Martinez, I think we can absolutely handle that." 3 days later, I sat alone at a beautifully set table at the Riverside Country Club, eating the most expensive meal I'd ever paid for myself. The view was stunning. The service was impeccable, and for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't worried about who was going to pay for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Courthouse wedding next Friday. Small dinner after at David's parents' house. Would you like to come? As my sister, as my guest. No wallet required." I smiled and texted back, "I wouldn't miss it." Then I added, "And Sarah, I'm proud of you for choosing what you can afford. That's the most adult thing any of us has done in years." The next text came an hour later. "I'm proud of you, too, for choosing yourself." Finally. I raised my champagne glass to the empty room and toasted the woman I was becoming. Rebecca Martinez, age 32, financially independent, emotionally free, and for the first time in her adult life, disappearing from all the right things. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over the city, painting everything golden. It looked like a new beginning. It looked like freedom. And for the first time in 8 years, it looked like home.